Okay, we're here to talk about sharpening your pencils and your charcoal. Um, we're going to do away with this kind of traditional pencil sharpening where we end up with a very shallow cone there when we use a traditional pencil sharpener like this. What happens is that the tip of that gets dull really quickly as we draw. And if you're holding your pencil correctly, which is this, and you're drawing on the from the side like that, what happens is the wood ends up scraping on the paper while you draw. So we don't want that to happen. So let's look at how to sharpen your pencils properly to avoid those problems. Let's start with the pencil that we'll be using for this class is a graphite holder or a lead holder. And so this is a 2 millimeter lead holder where if I press the chuck release button at the back, it opens the chuck at the front, and there's going to be a lead inside of there. So I'm going to load the lead in. The leads come in these tubes like this, made by Statler. They're really the best graphite that I've encountered. So inside there, if I shake it, you can hear the leads. And in this case, I've got a couple of B leads in there. So I'm going to pull one of those out, and you can see, actually this is a 2B. Let's just go with that. So I'm going to close up the tube with the leads inside. And then we manually load this into the lead holder like that. And so we can control how much is out or how much is in. Or if we just want to store the lead inside there, we can just do that so it doesn't break off. And when we want it to come out, we just hit the button and hold our hand there and extend the lead. Now to sharpen, I like to extend this fairly far. And I'm going to spin this on the sanding block side by side. But notice how much of this I'm laying on the sanding block. So I'm not just doing a tiny bit, and I'm not sharpening at an angle like this. I'm laying it flat, and the whole thing is contacting the surface. And I go back and forth side to side. But what's also happening in slow motion here, if I could slow it down, you'd see my fingers going like this while I go back and forth. So I'm sanding evenly around the whole surface of the lead. So what we want to end up with is a very long, steep taper in the graphite. So we want a long, steep tapering lead. So the sharpening takes place across this whole distance, not just at the very last moment. What this does for us is it makes sure that the pencil stays sharp for a long period of time as we draw. If you can imagine, if we eat into that by a few millimeters, it's still relatively sharp. It's much sharper than it would be with the traditional pencil. I mean, look, if I go down about 2 or 3 millimeters into this, imagine if I went 2 or 3 millimeters into this. We've got total flatness, and here we're still sharp. So that's one of the reasons why we sharpen this way. Another is that when we hold the pencil properly and draw properly, you can see we're not scraping any wood on the surface that we're drawing on. And finally, this is a very versatile drawing tool. So if I pull over a piece of scratch paper and think about the different ways that we can draw on this, we can get the perfectly sharp line out of the tip. If we're holding it at a different angle, we can get a little bit of a thicker, wider line. And of course, we could get a very fat surface to tone with as well. So it's a very versatile thing when we sharpen this way. So that's how we'll be working with our graphite materials. Then we'll move into working with charcoal. And so when we work with charcoal, we'll be using both vine charcoal and we'll be using charcoal pencils like this one. And let's first talk about sharpening your vine charcoal. So out of the box, I'm going to pull some sticks of vine charcoal. This is an HB vine charcoal made by Nitram, so it's really good stuff. Now, for best results, I know it's tempting not to do this. You want to just save this nice, it's got a pretty wrapper on there. We want to save that as is. A lot of my students will try to shove this whole thing into their charcoal holder. And it really doesn't work that well. So what we want to do is break this into about thirds. So about 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to take about that much of it. and we will place this into the charcoal holder. Okay, so once you have about that much in there, that's all you need. And we're going to squeeze this and slide the ring up. A lot of students don't know that that ring is to slide this and to lock that in place. So I can't pull that out now. So we've got a nice tight grasp on there. But look at, there's not that much charcoal in there now. So I've got about 2/3 of it out here, maybe 3/4 and 1/4 in there. Now you can either sharpen this whole thing right from its square state on the block, or you could save yourself a little bit of time, take a razor blade, and I find it helps to have something to capture some of the debris. But I'm gonna take the razor blade and slide it along the corners of this square vine charcoal. Try to capture some of the debris coming off of the vine charcoal so it doesn't make such a big mess for you, even though you can see it's spraying over there. Now, once I get it into a quasi-pointed state like this, and you see I'm turning this as I go. Once I get it to about there, I will switch to the sanding block. And we'll spin this on the sanding block. This is going to make a lot of vine charcoal powder. Later, when we study some of the vine charcoal techniques that we're going to use, we're actually going to use this powder in the drawing. So take a look at that. Beautifully sharpened vine charcoal. We want the vine charcoal to stay always in that state when we're drawing. So with any kind of drawing, I should back up and say this is true of when we're drawing with the graphite pencil as well. The artist is just constantly sharpening. You know, it's just a part of our process that we have to constantly keep our materials sharp. Really, with any kind of craftsmanship, the artist is always sharpening their tools. Okay, so that's sharpening your vine charcoal. Now, have a look at this. This is a charcoal pencil. This is an HB charcoal pencil. Look how it's been sharpened. When you buy these in the store, they have this shape. They have the traditional cone shape, which is really no good to us. So we need to put the proper long taper on the charcoal pencil. So this is where I think the most difficult area of sharpening comes in, because we have to learn how to get good with using our razor blade. So I'm going to demonstrate using the razor blade properly now. So this pencil's already been whittled into the proper shape. So let's find one that is not in its proper state. Here's one that's broken. So we're going to sharpen this up together. Now, notice also about this pencil is that it's not that long anymore. And so when your pencils get short, another good use of your charcoal holder is to put the pencil into the holder and extend its length. This actually makes it easier to sharpen too, because there's more to hold on to while you sharpen it. Now, before I get into this, let me just say that if this should happen to you, if your charcoal pencil breaks off, or I should say really when it breaks off, it's just a matter of time. You're going to sharpen this. This will fall on the floor at some point, and this whole thing will snap off. You can take that piece of charcoal that broke off, and you can either put it into a charcoal holder. Like this was a piece of charcoal that came out of this pencil. So I put it in a charcoal holder. We can also put it in actually the lead holder. So let's empty the lead holder and get any lead out of there. So that's empty. And now I'm going to shove that stick of charcoal into the graphite holder like that, and I can still draw with it. So if you happen to be in a moment in your drawing practice where you can't stop and resharpen, this can save you time. So this was previously in there, and now we want to resharpen this to get it back. Now the following technique here is the way that we're going to be sharpening any of our charcoal pencils, our chalk pencils, white chalk, red chalk, all of those things are going to be sharpened in this way. So hold the pencil in your non-writing hand. So for me, it's my left hand because I'm a right-handed person. The blade goes in your dominant hand, so my right hand. Notice how I'm holding the blade. I've got the sharp edge out here is totally away from my hand. It comes close right here at this corner, but it's totally away. And my thumb is in the back here. Now, this hand with the blade, you have to think about, is for guiding and steering the blade only. We're not going to be pushing with this hand. No pushing, only guiding with the blade hand. The pushing is going to come from this thumb. So I'm going to put the thumb behind the blade, and I'm going to begin to whittle like that. So the pressure, as you can see, is coming from this thumb. The steering is this hand. So check yourself and make sure that you're not trying to push with this hand, because that's where we can kind of slip and break the pencil or just lose control. So now notice I'm just taking little bites out of the wood and I'm turning. So I take a little bite and I turn. I'm whittling. Take a little shave and turn it. Don't try to go all the way down to the actual drawing material right away. So as you whittle this, I shouldn't be trying to jump down through the wood to the charcoal within one pass. I'm going to slowly arrive at the charcoal, and each time I take a bite, I am turning. Okay, so once again, the muscle power is coming from this thumb. The steering and guiding is this hand, but I'm not pushing with this hand. And that gives me the best results out of sharpening. It also keeps me safe from slipping and cutting myself with the blade. Occasionally, people will slip and cut themselves with the razor blade. It's very rare, but it's good to have a little first aid kit on hand. You can get them at the hardware store or pharmacy. Just a little tiny first aid kit that has Band-Aids and disinfectant in it. So you can see I'm exposing the length of charcoal there, and I'm trying to sculpt a transition in the wood here that will be consistent with the taper that ends up happening in the charcoal itself. And I want that taper to be kind of long. So that's sort of one of the interesting appearances of an artist's properly sharpened pencil, is it has a really long taper to it. Okay, once I get the charcoal exposed, I can begin turning to the sandpaper to sharpen this. But please note that I didn't try to sharpen this area. I didn't try to sharpen any of the charcoal itself with the blade. The blade was only for exposing the charcoal in the wood. So I was only carving the wood with the blade. Okay, let's move this aside. And now we'll turn to the block. Now the key here again is lay this whole thing flat on the block. So don't come at it at a steep angle like this. Lay it flat and tangent to the surface of the block. And go side to side. Go slowly and with lots of patience. You don't want to rush this, otherwise you'll end up snapping off what you've emerged from the wood. So side to side, and let your fingertips turn like this as you go back and forth at the same time. So we get an even rate of sharpening. Now if I start to speed up and press hard, I can risk snapping it off. The tendency is we go faster and faster and we press harder and harder and we snap it off. So what I recommend is stop, take a look at it, and sort of reset yourself. Start again. That way you'll cultivate a lot of patience for this, and you'll successfully sharpen the pencil without breaking it off. Have a look. It's getting there. And take your time and you'll get a really nice, beautiful point. And the trick is, once you have the point on there, we want to keep that point. Here, it's starting to come around. We want to keep that point. So continue to sharpen and resharpen as you draw when you use charcoal pencils or chalk pencils. These could be black, red, or white. Any of those pencils we'll be using in this class. We need to sharpen them in this manner. Or if you have, if for the beginning of the semester, if you're intending on using a traditional wooden pencil for drawing, a wooden graphite pencil, you'll need to sharpen those in this way as well. So now we're getting a nice, long, beautiful point on there. So finally, I'll say one of the nice things about sharpening in this way is that once you have that taper, you'll see that it's very easy to then keep that taper going. It's easy to keep the pencil sharpened in this shape once you have induced the shape to the pencil. And sometimes I come back and clean it up, and I try to get the taper in the wood to be continuous with the charcoal part itself, or graphite or chalk or whatever the pencil is. Now, the one last thing I'll add is that I think one of the keys to success in doing this well is that this should be as new as possible. So if you can get a package of straight edge razor blades from the hardware store, they come with a little brown paper wrapped around them. Get that paper off and use it brand new to sharpen your pencils. That makes it easier. We want the razor blade to just glide through the wood like butter. It shouldn't feel like any kind of a struggle at all. If you're feeling like you have to push hard or push with the thumb hard and you feel like you're shaking as you go through the wood, that's because the blade is probably dull and needs to be discarded. Now, I keep all of my blades in a little container like that, and when this gets filled with a bunch of dull blades, I put them in a container, another container for sharps, and then I dispose of all of them at the waste management facility for sharp disposal. Okay, thanks a lot for watching, and good luck with your sharpening.